Hello students. So today we are discussing the third chapter, human reproduction, in class 12 biology. In this video we are going to discuss about the male reproductive structure. So if we look at the general steps of human reproduction, then we can look at these basic steps. That is, first gametogenesis. There is nothing but a gamete formation. Then we have usually the process of gamete transfer. So in case of human beings, we speak about insemination as a process by which the male gametes get transferred into the female reproductive tract. Then comes the fertilization, that is the fusion of male and female gametes. Implantation is a special process wherein the newly formed zygote, which is developing into embryo, gets an entry into the endometrial lining, that is the uterus of the female, inside which it develops. So its entry into the uterine wall is called as implantation. Development is how the embryo develops ultimately into a fetus, and it is a long process wherein multiple steps are involved, such as embryogenesis. Embryogenesis is how the embryo develops from the zygote, and then there are various stages which ultimately leads to organogenesis, that is organ formation. So both cell division and differentiation are two important processes in this organogenesis, or overall as such in developmental process. Finally, coming to parturition is the process by which a fully developed newborn will come out from the mother's uterus. Coming to the male reproductive system, we are looking at the primary reproductive structures such as the testis and penis, and various ducts are involved like tubuli recti, retitestis, vasa efferentia, epididymis and vas deferens. Now reproductive structure, when we say, there are secondary reproductive structures also, but secondary reproductive structures are mainly required for the process of your sexual dimorphism, that is to make out the male and female individuals, and they are assistive in the process of reproduction. So here we are mainly talking about the primary reproductive structures. Along with these structures, there are certain glands which are involved, whose secretions are very necessary for the functioning of reproductive system. These are called as accessory sex glands, or the male sex glands, such as seminal vesicle, prostate gland, and Cowper's gland or bulbourethral gland. So to start with the testis, these are paired male gonads which produce sperms as well as produce the male sex hormone, that is androgens. Looking at its shape, it is roughly oval in shape, having a length of 4 to 5 centimeter and a width of 2 to 3 centimeter. It is situated outside the abdominal cavity. Now from here comes a very important special process, that is, in case of males, they are not present inside the abdominal cavity. Unlike in case of females, where the ovaries are present inside the abdominal cavity, in males, the testes are present outside the abdominal cavity in a separate bag-like structure, which is called as scrotum. Very important, remember this word. We also call it as a scrotal sac. Now this comes in the exam, basically why it happens. Now important to understand is that in testis, the process of spermatogenesis takes place, and the spermatogenesis requires a temperature which is around 2 to 2.5 degrees centigrade lower than the body temperature. So that a lower body temperature can be maintained, that's why it is present outside the body in a separate bag-like structure, which is called as the scrotum. Okay, or we also call it as a scrotal sac. Now this is the diagram of a scrotal sac, wherein we can see there are two chambers present. Both the chambers are basically separated by a boundary in between, and this boundary is called as a scrotal septum. Right? From outside it appears like a rough thickening, which is called as a raphe. Now in the two scrotal sacs, separately the testis is present along with a cord which is called as a spermatic cord. Now if we look at this spermatic cord and we look at the section of that cord, we will find that the spermatic cord contains vas deferens, as well as the nerve, veins, arteries, etc., along with all the other structures of the testis which is present within this scrotum. So we will look at the testis separately. Coming to the testis and its lobules, if we look at the outer coverings first, then the testis has three basic coverings, that is your tunica vaginalis, tunica albuginea, and tunica vasculosa. Tunica vaginalis is a sac-like structure which is present at the outermost side, which contains a coelomic cavity and a coelomic fluid. Now, obviously, when it is a coelomic cavity having a fluid inside, so we believe its function must be something like protection. Then tunica vaginalis is the tissue type which is present, which makes the actual testicles, and this tissue is dense, fibrous and collagenous connective tissue, which often passes into the testicular lobules, forming what are called as septa. Okay. Therefore, it divides the entire testis into multiple chambers, which are called as testicular lobules. Around 200 to 300 roughly testicular lobules are present in each testis. An average of what we call as around 250 testicular lobules are present. Other than that, within the lobules, if we see, within each testicular lobule, if we see, then there is an inner lining of vascular tissue. Loose connective tissue will be there along with vascular tissue, which is called as the tunica vasculosa. Within that tunica vasculosa tissue, we have some tube-like structures. These you can see are some coiled tube-like structures inside. These coiled tube-like structures are called as seminiferous tubules. Fine. So if we look at a section of it, if I cut it like this and we look at a section of this lobule, then we see these sections of multiple seminiferous tubule. Now each of these seminiferous tubule, if we slightly enlarge it, then it appears something like this. So this is suppose one seminiferous tubule, and this is another seminiferous tubule, and this is another seminiferous tubule, and so on. So within this seminiferous tubule, if we look at the lining is made up of germinal epithelium. Okay, it's an epithelial tissue, specialized epithelial tissue, which is called as germinal epithelium. Now this germinal epithelium can differentiate into two type of cell. One is the sperm mother cell called as spermatogonia, and other is a nutritive cell called as Sertoli cells. So this spermatogonia or the sperm mother cell will carry out a process to give you the sperms, whereas the Sertoli cells are nutritive in nature. They have dense cytoplasm and a larger nucleus, and its main function is to provide the nutrition to the developing spermatogonia. Then very important to remember is we see that this is the boundary of one seminiferous tubule, this is the boundary of another seminiferous tubule, this is the boundary of another seminiferous tubule. In between this area which is present, so this is called as the interstitial space. So in this interstitial space, there is connective tissue, but along with that, there are some specialized cells. These cells are present in interstitial tissue, so you call it as interstitial cells, or discovered by Leydig, you call it as Leydig cells. Fine. Very important to remember, these Leydig cells are the ones which are responsible for producing the male sex hormone androgens, that is testosterone, which we commonly know. And obviously, since it is a connective tissue, it's usually a loose connective tissue, and therefore has some other immunologically important cells also present in it. Coming to the different ducts which are present in the testis, we see that seminiferous tubules, they open or come out through some ducts like this which you see, and these ducts are called as tubuli recti. Okay, all these tubuli recti, around 1 to 3 seminiferous tubules are present in each testicular lobule. They join to form one single tubuli recti. That tubuli recti comes out and joins with each other. So obviously, when there are so many tubuli recti joining with each other, it forms a kind of network of tubes that is called as retitestis. Right? Reti as in endoplasmic reticulum, it means a kind of network. So from this retitestis, appears some fine tubules which carry the sperm out. Around 10 to 20 such tubules are present, which are called as vasa efferentia, the third type of ducts. These vasa efferentia open into a very long duct which is almost 6 meters in length, known as epididymis, a very important duct system. And this is around 6 meters in length, but it is highly coiled to form almost a length of around 6 to 7 centimeters. Initially, it is very broadly coiled to form caput epididymis. The middle portion is called as corpus epididymis, and the last portion is called as a cauda epididymis. What is very important about epididymis is that it is basically the storehouse of sperm. Very, very important, remember it. When the males produce the sperms at a regular interval, all these sperms are actually stored in this epididymis, because unless there is a sexual stimulation, the sperms will not come out of this epididymis. Cauda epididymis finally opens into what we have been studying in lower classes as sperm duct, actually known as this one, which is called as the vas deferens. Initially coiled, then it becomes straight and goes up. Clear? Now, if we look at the next continuation, we see that this vas deferens, in continuation, it continues out, comes out of the scrotal sac, you see, and it is coming to join with a first gland known as seminal vesicle. So when it joins with the seminal vesicle, it forms a tube, this one, which is called as the ejaculatory duct. This ejaculatory duct is opening into next duct, which is known as this one, which I am drawing, that is the urethra. Now, urethra, you know, is mainly responsible for carrying urine. It's a part of your excretory system. But in males, urethra has a dual function, so we call it as a urinogenital tract. Means one function is to carry urine, that's a urinary tract. Other function is to carry the sperms, so it is a genital tract also. Now, this seminal vesicle, it opens along with the vas deferens, becomes ejaculatory duct and opens into this urethra. So this urethra has actually three parts. Initial part of urethra, which opens from the bladder, is called as the urinary urethra. The first part, because it strictly carries only urine. But after that, when it comes out of the bladder, you can see it is surrounded by an organ, that is prostate gland. Therefore, this prostate gland, the urethra part inside the prostate gland, is called as the prostatic urethra. Then it comes out of the prostate gland where it is not surrounded by any part, and this part is therefore called as the membranous urethra. However, another gland, this one called as Cowper's gland or bulbourethral gland, opens into the membranous urethra. Then the urethra is surrounded by this structure, copulatory organ, which is called as the penis. So this part of the urethra, which is coming from inside the penis, is called as the penile urethra. So ultimately you get four parts of urethra: urinary urethra, prostatic urethra, membranous urethra, and penile urethra. These are the four parts of urethra that we get. Then the copulatory organ, that is penis. It is an erectile male copulatory organ which has a long shaft and an expanded tip. This tip at the end is called as the glans penis, which is a sensitive tip. If we look at this urethra, it comes from inside and opens through this tip. The opening of the urethra is called as the urethral orifice, or we also call it as a urethral meatus. Like most of the openings on our body, urethral orifice is also covered by a skin fold. This skin fold is called as the prepuce, or we also call it as a foreskin. Okay. Now, this penis is made up of a lot of spongy tissue. If we look at a section, a transverse section of the penis, we see this part, a cross-sectional view, where there are three columns of spongy tissue, 1, 2, and this one. So there are 3 columns of spongy tissue. These 3 columns of spongy tissue are known as corpora cavernosa, the 2 dorsolateral columns, and the one which is medioventral column, this one is called as corpus spongiosum. Corpus spongiosum actually surrounds the urethra. So you see here, this one is the section of the urethra which is surrounded by corpus spongiosum. However, in corpora cavernosa, you have 2 deep veins which carry blood. It is important to understand that these spongy tissue have lot of blood sinuses inside. Okay, and when they bring blood, these blood sinuses, they get filled with the blood, and when they get filled with the blood, then the tissue, that is this spongy tissue, becomes stiff and get erectile. Right? That's called as penile erection, and penile erection is a very important process to take place for the successful sexual intercourse. Otherwise, ejaculation process does not happen properly. Then we are talking about sex glands. There are 3 sex glands. One is seminal vesicle, prostate gland, and Cowper's gland. Seminal vesicle secretes what is known as seminal plasma. Okay, and this constitutes almost 60 to 70% of the semen. However, prostate gland secrete prostatic fluid, which constitute around this 20 to 30% of the semen, and Cowper's gland, also called as bulbourethral gland, secrete mucus, which constitute less than around 5% of the semen. So maximum constitution is that of the seminal vesicle only. If we look at the constitution of seminal vesicle, it contains certain sperm nutrients such as fructose. Sperm nutrient is necessary because the sperm after ejaculation need to move. Moreover, it need to stay alive for a period of time, and it need to move, so it needs energy. So obviously it needs food. So the sperm nutrients such as fructose is present, citric acid is present, prostaglandin is present. Prostaglandin is a kind of hormone whose function you will learn in the fertilization process, but as of now you can remember it helps in reversing the peristaltic movement of the female genital tract. Female genital tract has a normal peristaltic movement, as a result of which, if anything is present inside, will tend to come out. But when it reverses that peristaltic movement, also allows a mild contraction of the genital tract and the uterus, allows whatever present in it to move inward rather than outward. So after the deposition of the semen, it is important to facilitate the sperm in moving inside the uterus. So that is facilitated by prostaglandin partially, and some other things also plays a role in it. You will learn in fertilization. Fibrinogen and other various proteins are also present, which helps in keeping the sperm together, okay, but does not allow them to coagulate. Prostatic fluid is thin, milky and alkaline. You will soon understand, I will discuss why it is needed to be alkaline. There is calcium present, phosphate present, and bicarbonate ions present, which gives the semen an alkaline nature. Clotting enzymes and profibrinolysin again prevents the sperm from undergoing coagulation because its ejaculation contains huge millions of sperms. The mucus obviously has a lubricating function, and it helps in lubrication of the urinogenital tract. At the same time, it also lubricates the penis in the female reproductive tract. So when we look at the overall ejaculation of semen, semen is said to be a mucoid, milky, viscous fluid. It's slightly alkaline with pH 7.3 to 7.5. Please understand why it needs to be alkaline. Now, urethra is a urinogenital tract, means urine also comes out of it. When urine is coming out of it, then there is a chance that any traces of urine left out can make that environment acidic in nature. Second point, in the vaginal tract, when it is released, acidic environment is maintained in vaginal tract by certain fermentative bacteria which are present in it naturally, so that the acidic environment can prevent the growth of certain pathogenic organisms. In either case, this acidic environment can kill or destroy the sperms when released in it. So sperm is present in a fluid which is alkaline in nature, which will neutralize that acidic environment. So the mixture of seminal plasma and the prostatic fluid and mucus is ultimately the semen along with the sperms. 40% of the sperm must have vigorous motility at least. We are talking about 3 to 4 ml of semen which is released in each ejaculation, and it contains around 4 to 500 million sperms. But that many amount of sperms when it is moving does not remain alive. Most of them will die on the way. However, only around 40% of the sperm, if has at least that much have a vigorous motility, the chances of fertilization increases so that some amount of sperm will reach the egg. Then that was all about the male reproductive structure in human reproduction. In the next video, we will discuss about female reproductive structure in human. So that was all for today. Thank you.